there a part of your personality that you just can't seem to let out? Like maybe it feels unsafe, or you're worried about how other people will react or receive you or not receive you. Let me tell you that this is literally the story of my entire life. I grew up being so unapologetically my free and loud and goofy self. Whenever I was around other people, especially people that I love and feel comfortable around, I became all kinds of huggy and expressive and laughy, all things that came from a genuine and authentic place of presence and fullness. But the older that I've gotten, the less people seem to understand my personality. So I've been noticing myself shrinking, being less of a fun-loving goofball and more of a mature, calm, and collected version of myself. Both versions were always there. It's just that now, one is more socially accepted than the other, being that we're older and whatnot. There seems to be this unspoken correlation between age and dullness, I suppose. And I think that I finally decided that I am not okay with it. And I believe that I have a good reason behind it as well. So grab yourself a nice hot or cold drink, get nice and comfortable and cozy, and let's begin today's conversation. Hello, my friends, and welcome back or welcome here to another episode of the Being Aloud podcast. As always, I'm your host. Thank you so much for being here. And today it feels like the name of our podcast, the Being Aloud podcast, feels like it makes a lot of sense. It feels fitting for today's conversation because we're going to talk about being ourselves and what that looks like and what society expects from us. Because I posted about this. I think I mentioned it in last week's podcast as well. But also I posted a vlog. And basically, if you don't know and you haven't seen any of these things, I went to a creativity workshop in the month of April 2024. So this past April, if you're watching in real time. It was in London, and the person giving the workshop was Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote the book Big Magic and Eat, Pray, Love, and lots of other amazing books. But this was specifically about creativity. And something unlocked for me there. And my life has not been the same ever since. The way I've been approaching every day of my life has been very different from the way that I have been approaching my life for the past, I would say, 4 years at least. But before that, I was in a very similar place to where I am now. And so it's almost as though this workshop kind of brought me back to this original design that I was created to be. But as I am, So basically one of the main things that have been changing is that I have been taking journaling a lot more seriously again, where before, for the last 4 years, I would probably journal once every week, once every 2 weeks, sometimes like a long time would go in between journaling sessions. And even when I did journal, it felt like there was something kind of forced about it, and it didn't seem like it flowed from an authentic, true inner place of honesty with myself. But ever since this workshop, I feel like I've been digging and I've been unearthing so much of who I am, so much of who I feel like I was put on this earth to be. And as a result, I've obviously been noticing things about myself and about my surroundings and everything like that. And as I've been unearthing and as I've been feeling like I'm coming home to myself through journaling on a daily basis, I have been realizing that over the past 4 years of completely life-altering experiences that I had to go through, it's as though I have lost my sense of play. And there's so many reasons. One of the reasons is very obvious, obviously, is because so many of the things I went through were very traumatizing. And so therefore, Obviously, when you go through very painful experiences, you become a lot more dull. But the hope is that this dullness only lasts for a temporary period until you heal and come out of this dark place that you're in. But what ended up happening with me is that the more dull that I became, the easier I found it to fit in, which is so weird. And of course, I'm only noticing this in hindsight. But the more like, I don't know, like my voice wasn't as loud anymore, and I didn't crack jokes anymore, and I wasn't like extra huggy of all the people around me, which anyone who knows me or anyone who knows my old self knows that I was like the hug master, you know? I expressed how much I loved the people that I loved with like ginormous hugs all the time. And I became less of that. And I became more of this like adult, I guess, this mature adult. And it just became so much easier to like fit in with people, whatever. But then during the workshop, we did a few exercises that kind of revealed to me that no, this isn't who I am. It's not who I'm comfortable being when I'm alone in my own head, in my own heart. It's not who I am. I always had these two sides to my personality. People always would see the happy-go-lucky booba who was always loud and cheerful and was laughing all the time. And it was impossible to tell if there was something wrong with me because I was always just so over the moon. And then there was also this very serious, deep thinker, philosophy lover, like mature, just deep thinker. So, I mean, it's not like I was being inauthentic when I was just my more mellow self, but I was being my more mellow self because as my experiences dulled the cheerful side of me, I learned that that's what society wanted. And so I kept doing it. And there was no need for me to kind of go back to being like who I actually am, this other side of me. And so all that to say that I wasn't being inauthentic these past 4 years. I was being very, very true and authentic, but I wasn't being fully myself. And I know that this is something a lot of us can struggle with. It doesn't have to be that you're naturally a happy-go-lucky person and that, like, I mean, your story doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but I find that there tends to be a correlation between growing up and becoming more dull in general. And I mean, literally just take one look at a child and you will see what I mean. Children are so carefree. They're running around. They're very unsuspecting. They're trusting. They are loving. They don't think twice before they get their hands dirty in like a sand pit or before they jump in the sea. They don't worry about what's on the other side or what's beneath them. They just like take a leap of faith. And we were all children. Like we were all children once. And when did we lose the sense of wonder? But my question today, what I'm concerned about, isn't when we lost the sense of wonder. It's when we learned to normalize losing the sense of wonder. So much so that anyone who still has that sense of wonder is now considered an anomaly, is considered weird, is even considered too much. I mean, I don't even think I can tell you how many times I was told that I was too much because I was loud, because I was, I don't know, bubbly. I was told that I was too much. And I even have a podcast episode, like a very old one, about the concept of taking up space, like just take up space, have your personality take up space. But I was called too much. I was perceived as being too much because it's normal for us to grow up and become duller and more mellow, and that is considered maturity, and that is considered like adulthood, and it's not considered normal to be a child at heart, to have a sense of wonder, to have a sense of love for life and just hopeful expectation and positive expectation all the time. And so if you were able to maintain any kind of sense of wonder, you were considered weird. But if you were able to sit at a table and like, you know, speak like this and be super like calm and like, you know, then you're considered a mature adult. I don't know about you, but that to me sounds like something is really messed up with this world. That's just what it sounds like. It sounds like something is majorly messed up with this world. And I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. So a couple of weeks ago, I went on a diving trip with my friends. We went to a place called Marsa Alam. If you're Egyptian, you know it. If not, then you should definitely check it out because whoa, amazing. But we went scuba diving there, and basically it's just a camp. It's a very basic place, you're just in nature, whatever. And so what ends up happening is you spend time with the people around you and you have conversations and all that stuff because you're not distracted. More often than not, people will like leave their phones behind and just be in the present moment and be in nature. And that's very much what happened. And another thing that happened was that we made a new friend, our group. We made a new friend. And I mean, she was so lovely. And I really, really liked her. I really still like her. I'm very grateful that we became friends and so cool. But something happened that kind of got me thinking. One of those times when we were sitting by the beach, just having conversations, I was like high on scuba diving. I was high on nature. I was high on being in the present moment. Meanwhile, I was also high on being in the middle of this journey that I'm on, where I'm uncovering so much about myself. I'm sitting with myself. I'm sitting with my heart. I'm learning so much. And so I was just high. I was just so happy. And it felt like I was at home. I was at home in my body. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I wasn't performing. I wasn't putting on a show. I didn't care what other people thought of me. I didn't care how I came across. I just cared that I was myself. And I was myself. And being myself, when I make a new friend and I like that new friend, I'm like extra expressive of like, I'm so grateful we met. I'm so happy, la 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 la. And then I will join them into time with me and my friends. And I like be extra in that way, I suppose. And so we were sitting and we were playing games and we're all just having a great time. And she's just like looking at us like she wasn't judging us or anything. Obviously, she doesn't know us. And she's super nice, by the way. Like, I don't want this to come across like she's not nice. She's so, so nice. But she's like really smart and really mature. Also, she doesn't live in Egypt. And so like, even though she's Egyptian, but like, basically we're very different people. But she was looking at me and my friends being all goofy and laughing and joking and not having like deep conversations, just truly chewing the fat. And I could sense a sense of like, okay, kids, like go play along. I'm gonna go like study or read or do whatever. And like we were all reading too, by the way, but like, you know what I mean? And so I like contemplated because I was like, this person's so nice. Like she's not doing any of that from a place of like, I'm better than you, or like from a place of like, I don't know, like I didn't feel like it came from any bad place. She was genuinely so nice, but she seemed to me to represent society at large, Egyptian society, global society, all kinds of society, where we're older than this now. Like, can you guys not chill for 3 seconds? How old are you guys? You guys seem like you're so young. You need to be older. Aren't you too old to be laughing all the time? Aren't you too old to be blah, blah, blah? And like, no, we're not too old. Like, we're not too old. And like the mood in the room, of course, it's not a room. We were outside, but like the mood kind of shifted where we were like we want to have fun, but we don't know how, etc. And that's when it first started to hit me. And so naturally, I started journaling on the subject. And I was like, I feel like the more work that I'm doing on myself, the more time that I'm spending in my journal, the more time that I'm spending reading blog posts that like are very on the same wavelength as what I'm going through, the more that I'm exposing myself to this way of thinking, the more childlike that I'm becoming. And it feels like it's almost unintentional. Like I don't mean to become more of a child, but it's like in a good way. It's not in an immature way. It's in a good way where the more work that I'm doing on myself, the more that I'm unearthing this like lost but original version of myself, this child that always was and always will be. And I just need to like make sure she stays alive. I just need to make sure that she is nurtured and loved. You know what I mean? And so to me, it seemed like the correlation between age and maturity had to be that the older we get, the more childlike we become. Because the older you get, the more that you know yourself, hopefully, if you're putting in the work, if you're exerting the effort, the more that you find out about yourself, the more that you learn about yourself, the more that you get comfortable with yourself. And the more that you get comfortable with yourself, the supposition is that then the less you care about what other people think, the less you are interested in other people's like reading of your personality or analysis of like whatever. You just care that you know yourself, you know where you are, you know how much work you've put into becoming this person. And therefore, it doesn't really matter as much what other people think. And so from my journaling and what I have learned and the reading that I have done and the like effort that I have put into kind of trying to understand this concept of like being a child, the more that I have found that contrary to what we seem to have normalized, it is more normal that the older we get, the more comfortable we become with being ourselves completely. So if we want to crack a joke, if we want to laugh, if we want to be silly, if we want to be goofy, there shouldn't be this extra layer of like, what are people going to think of me? Are they thinking that I'm too loud? Are they thinking that I'm too funny? Are they thinking that blah, blah, blah? There shouldn't be that extra layer. You see what I mean? Even though we live in a world where no, the older you are, the more calm and collected you should be because that's how you show that you're mature. Well, no, I think that the more mature we are, the more comfortable we are with being goofy, with being silly, with being childlike. And I feel like the older we get, if we're doing it right, I hope, the less self-conscious we become, which then opens up so much more space, so much more freedom for us to explore the world with like childlike wonder, with eyes wide open, where we are seeing the world, we're seeing the sea, we're seeing the flowers with new eyes, with eyes that have gained perspective from age. And because the older you get, the more of the crap of the world that you see, why isn't it then that we are more so able to stop and look at flowers with more wonder now that beauty has become so contrasted with the ugliness of the world? You know, rather than letting the ugliness of the world and the terrible experiences that we go through and stuff like that dull us and dim us, and then for us to conform to that being the normal way of life now that we're older and mature, I feel like it makes a lot more sense that now that I've seen the ugliness of the world, for me to be able to recognize the beauty of the world that much more and be able to stop at it with even more childlike wonder. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but that's just kind of what I've been thinking about. I also read a quote and it opened my eyes to something else. So I want to read you the quote and then I want us to talk about it really briefly. I follow this blog by Suleika Jawad, who it's called The Isolation Journals, and I highly recommend that you go check that out. It's The Isolation Journals. Even if you just type it into Google, it'll pop up. But anyway, so this was one of the blog posts, and it says, I say all this to emphasize that the value of creative cross-training is not in mastering some new discipline. It's an exercise in unburdening yourself from ego, of liberating yourself from perfectionism. It's about getting back in touch with the sense of play that we have so innately as children. It's a way to ignite our imagination and your sense of wonder, to reconnect with an old part of yourself and maybe connect with others too. End quote by Suleika Jawad. Of course, this was about creativity. It wasn't about becoming more like children, but in unburdening ourselves, in growing up, in exploring the world. The hope is to reignite the sense of wonder. And I like what she said, which is the point that I want us to talk about, is it's an exercise in unburdening yourself from ego. Now, that's exactly, I feel like something clicked for me, because the older that we get, the more self-aware that we become, right? Naturally. The more self-aware that we become, the bigger our egos become. And I feel like ego is a very natural thing. You have to have a sense of self, right? Otherwise, you're going to be weird. Like, you should have a sense of self. You should have an ego to a very large extent. But when the ego becomes so big that it suffocates us and it suffocates our ability to experience the world in the childlike wonder that we were granted as human beings, and that was innately born in us from when we were children, then that ego has become a lot. It's become too much. And that's exactly what happens. The more self-aware that we become, the bigger that our egos become, the more aware that we become of how other people are perceiving us, what other people are saying about us or thinking of us or any of that stuff. And the more that happens, the less childlike we are. And the more that we are robbing ourselves of the privilege of being childlike, of being one with nature, of going outside, of being silly and goofy and funny and laughing, and of walking up to people that we love and giving them a big squeeze for absolutely no reason or whatever it is. I feel like something really absolutely clicked for me, especially because this is something that I grew up being told, Booba, like, chill. Booba, like, calm down. Can you please be less? Every time that I expressed how excited I was that I saw the most beautiful flower, or that I just experienced the most amazing swim in the sea in the middle of the summer, or whatever. Like, I would express stuff and I would be told stop. And so over the past 4 years, I indeed was dulled. But as I am unearthing more of who I am, I feel like I'm returning. I feel like I'm coming back to the original version of who I am. And that original version has given permission to my older original version to express itself, to express herself, to come out, to find space and to know that she's going to be nurtured. And that to me is maturity. The older we get, it makes more sense that we express more childlike wonder, more selflessly, more thoughtlessly, more less egotistically. It just makes sense if we're doing the right work, if we're putting in the effort. It just makes sense. My friends, it feels as though this is a topic that maybe all of us need to hear. I feel like I am sick and tired of adults adulting in a way that seems very inauthentic and untrue. And if it's one thing that we know together as a Being Aloud community, it's that life is so freaking hard. It's so hard. Like, it will throw curveballs, like, eventually. And often life is hard. It's not easy. It's not a breezy experience. And so if we are spending our time worrying about what other people are going to think or how other people are going to perceive us, and not enough time digging into our own hearts and our own minds, trying to understand who we actually are, so that we can live from a place of fullness, from a place of self-knowledge and authenticity, then we're doing ourselves such a disservice, because we're only alive for such a short period of time. And I don't know about you, but I kind of want to live it to the fullest. I want to enjoy the butterflies and the birds and the clouds and the sea and the flowers and the children and the puppies, and I want to enjoy it all, because I know that life is hard and it just makes the good things that much sweeter. So one thing to leave today's episode with is, don't let the world dull you, and don't buy into the lie that says that the older you get, the more dull you need to become in order to fit into older, more mature circles. When people aren't their full selves and when they reject fun and joy, they are the ones who are immature. It's just a reflection of people who haven't done the work on themselves and aren't very comfortable in their own skin, aren't very comfortable being themselves. So, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening or watching on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube and also on the podcast, please hit the subscribe button. Lord knows how big of a difference it makes. Truly. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let us have conversations. All the conversations that I've had on YouTube have just been great. Also leave a comment to let me know if there's anything specific you'd like us to talk about, any topics you feel like have been on your mind that you would like us to explore. And thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to see you again next time.